There is a country where acts of genocide has occurred, where people have been severed from their cultures, had their languages smothered by a foreign tongue, and their children stolen. This country is Australia. Now, although a lot has improved since colonisation, such as better human rights and equality, the past still lingers, and it has manifested in the form of overt and systemic racism. Now, education has the power to combat this by challenging negative stereotypes and colonial values. The problem is that Australian history is often taught like this, where colonial perspectives dominates and Indigenous perspectives often an add-on, unexamined and tokenistic. And this was very much like my own education. I left school believing that the only living Indigenous cultures were out in the bush, and it wasn't until much later that I discovered just how little I knew about my country, and I was deeply embarrassed. Because Indigenous cultures are integral to our national identity and integral to our history. Now, the state and national curricula have acknowledged this and in fact made it mandatory to teach Indigenous cultures and histories for decades. So if it's been mandatory for so long, why are so many people still leaving school with such little knowledge? And this is what I want to examine in my study. I want to understand the gap between the curriculum which is intended and that which is actually being received. And to do this, I'm going to examine 3 schools in depth, so I can understand the factors which assist and restrict the teaching and learning of Indigenous cultures and histories. In particular, I want to look at principals and how their leadership impacts heads of learning area, teaching practice, and ultimately what the students are learning. Because although the Australian curriculum has stated that Indigenous cultures and histories are to be a cross-curriculum priority, meaning that every teacher in every subject must teach this, but they only need to teach it where relevant. So this means teachers decide where it's relevant in an already overcrowded curriculum, where it's relevant to a non-Indigenous class, and where it's relevant when they know little about the culture themselves. And where's the accountability? There are no national tests on this. So if we want to make real change, we need to understand what helps and what hinders Australian teachers so that we can ensure that Indigenous perspectives are not only taught, but taught competently. So we can right the wrongs of the past, move towards reconciliation, so that Indigenous perspectives is no longer on the periphery, but central to Australian education.